What makes us human? Is it our emotions, our thoughts, our actions? What separates us from other animals? And what does it mean to live a meaningful life? Today, we will explore these themes by taking you through our Being Human expedition. We will take you through the key details of what we have been learning about and show you the experts that have worked with us and the fieldwork that we have been on. After this, in cruise, each student will present extracts of their speech, which will ultimately aim to answer our overall guiding question: what does it mean to be human? Ready? Let's go.
We kicked off our expedition with a week of immersion, where we explored themes of identity, empathy, and how society can influence our thinking. We studied the book and film Wonder, which tells us the story of Uggy Pullman, a boy with facial differences. The film included themes of kindness, acceptance, and what it means to be different, as Uggy's journey inspired his classmates and family.
We also looked at the mystery clips around our anchor text, the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime, and this got us thinking about what the expedition could be about. During the expedition itself, we read the book together, which showed how the main character had autism. The book explored themes of truth, trust, communication, and the challenges of being different. It also touched on family relationships, coping with loss, and finding your place in the world.
As our expedition was called Being Human, in science we studied the functions of human organ systems with a focus on the circulatory, gas exchange and reproductive systems.
In Human, we started by considering some of the beliefs associated with the Abrahamic faiths about being human and the sanctity of life. We then learned about the transatlantic slave trade, about how millions of Africans were brutally kidnapped and sold into slavery to support the trade triangle of the Industrial Revolution. We zoomed in on the Middle Passage and how enslaved people's identities were taken away from them and forced to live on plantations in the southern states of the USA. We built on this by learning about the Jim Crow laws that led to the segregation of black and white people in the southern states of the USA. And this directly led to us learning about the civil rights movement during the first half of the 20th century.
We reflected on what it means to be human by focusing on how violent and non-violent methods for protesting against segregation were used by people such as Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, and Martin Luther King. Here we learned about how those people who wanted change were actually the ones who went about trying to get it. We were inspired by the acts of people who took part in sit-ins, the Montgomery bus boycott, and other kinds of activism.
One day right now in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
Our studies on how organisations such as Oxfam supported people in poverty and fight for social justice in countries around the world inspired us to think about why people do this. This linked to geography, where we learnt about development measures and the causes of uneven development from economic, environmental and historical factors.
We went on fieldwork to Leeds Art Gallery and the Henry Moore Institute. We experienced different workshops with Emily and Amanda. They guided us through many different aspects of both locations. Both of our experts planned their sessions to help us explore even further what it means to be human.
Some of the examples that Amanda showed us really got us thinking about what they might have been trying to communicate. She encouraged us to think of questions that we would ask the artist if they were with us, and helped us to think about the themes of our expedition more carefully.
Workshop was organised around the idea that artist and art is at its heart all about being an individual. being curious and sharing ideas and opinions about ourselves and our world. So we made a personal space, a space for thinking that is called a sketchbook. I like the idea that sketchbooks can be places for experimenting and that nobody really owns that but you. I think curiosity can help us go deeper, and the Victorian art that we spent with can help us notice the interests of individuals from a different time. And I like the way in which storytelling, which is not an obvious necessarily meeting with emotion, but can help us share it with other people in a relatively comfortable way. So in summary, I think we found being human in art and in exploring it.
We had another workshop in surrealism, but this time the art was made in the form of sculptures. We looked at the wide range of different examples in the Henry Moore Institute, and this helped us to think about how we could use common materials to create our own.
We came back up to the studio space and used an array of found objects to think about surrealist elements such as combining bizarre objects together, dream-like landscapes, or evoking an emotion, which arguably all comes from like being a human and the human experience. So yeah, the two themes seem to link really nicely, and we had some amazing responses from the students. And then yeah, the appreciations at the end, that was quite touching actually. I've not experienced that before, and I think it's really valuable actually, practice, especially for young people. And yeah, it was greatly received.
One of our expedition's experts was Jane Hewitt, one of the co-founders of the charity called the Limbo Foundation. Jane shared her story of how her grandson Tommy was born without a limb. She spoke about how unprepared and unsupported Tommy's parents were when they received the news during pregnancy that their son was going to be born without a limb. Jane explained that they soon realised there was a lack of information, resources and support specifically for children with limb differences.
Started because of my grandson Thomas, who I always called Tommy D, and everybody now knows him as Tommy D, and he's the logo of Limbo Foundation, and he was the inspiration behind it. When we found out he was going to have a limb difference, we were absolutely distraught, because we just didn't know what to expect. I didn't know children could just be born missing a limb. When he was born, obviously he was absolutely adored. He's a gorgeous child, you need to meet him. And we realised when he got to about 4 that all the things that we worried about, riding a bike, cleaning his teeth, would he be able to crawl, would he, all the things, he just did. And we kept saying to ourselves, I wish we'd known this before. Why didn't we know this before? And my son Adam, who's Tommy's dad, said, well, if people having a limb different child knew that it was going to be okay, they'd feel a lot better. Somebody needs to do something. And we sort of kicked this idea around for a while, and after a while he said to me, Mum, you know what, that somebody's going to have to be us. So we did. And to cut a long story short, we started with our first event. We had about 25 people, 7 limb different children, and our last event had 650 people, including 128 limb different children. And at the end of the day, many of the children said to me, it's the first day I've ever felt normal, or I've found my tribe. Parents cried, not because they were sad, but because they were so happy to see their children just not hiding their limb difference, not hiding anything. And it's an oft-known saying that people say, you don't hide your limb difference at a limbo event. We're proud, we're limb different and proud, and we're born ready. I think to be human, you have to understand how somebody else feels, and if they have something that is different, how do they cope with that? And if you think that they need some support, how can you, not somebody else, how can you support them? And it's about raising awareness, and it's about getting people to see how to react to people who are limb different, whether they've got a limb difference or whether they've got any sort of difference. Being human means that we're all different, but we should all be equal. We're not all equal, but we should be, and that's what we should be working towards.
We wanted to engage with members of the local community in order to find out about what being human means to them. So a small group of students went on fieldwork to Ivy Court Elderly Residential Home in Bolby. As we walked there, we thought carefully about the kind of questions we could ask the residents. Some of us were quite nervous because we had never been to a place like this before, but little did we know, this fieldwork would be an essential part of our expedition.
We learnt how some of their parents had fought in World War II as fighter pilots, how they helped their families by doing chores, and how their parents made clothes for their children. We heard about the special times that they had by going to the seaside on holiday, and how they had been supported in their lives by the people who they loved, and how they had helped others. Raymond was one of the residents, and fortunately for us, his son had just returned from holiday and was visiting his dad while we were there. Right beside Raymond was his wife, and we were amazed to hear that they had been married for 65 years. Looking carefully, we noticed that Raymond's hand was held by his son throughout the entire time that we were there. We were fascinated to hear the reasons why.
He misses us because he doesn't see us as often. With us coming from Retford, it's a bit out of the way. I mean, the only reason I'm here today is because we've just come back from holiday and we've got a day spare, so we've popped in to see them today. But he misses us more in here because he was always an outside type of person. He was always outdoors, even walking outside all the time, until he was in here. And now he's, because of him having dementia and thinking about things differently, he thinks he's not allowed out. And I said to him, you can come out whenever. He says, no. He says, I don't think they'll let me out. He says, they'll let you out, you can come out with us. But he feels like he's stuck in here and he can't get out. So whenever we come, he's a lot happier and he recognises us. But his dementia is slowly getting worse. He can't remember names of our children, his grandchildren. Can't remember their names. He struggles with things like that. But yeah, it's nice to try and comfort him the best you can, because growing up men as men, you don't do things like that. But when it's your parents, and he's never reached out to me like it before until he's coming here, so it's a bit strange. But I don't mind at all, because it's your parents. You do what you can for your parents.
Before we left, we had a wonderful discussion about how much we had learned, and we appreciate the residents for spending so much time with us and for making us feel so welcome. When we had finished, the residents replied by actually giving appreciations to us. They spoke warmly about how much they had enjoyed meeting us. One of the ladies there explained that our questions had helped her to remember lots of things about the past, things that she thought she had forgotten.
I'm not a school child, but I'd like to appreciate this young lady because she's asked me some very, very interesting questions. Questions about my past that I've more or less forgotten about. So I've enjoyed it very much.
Wonderful. And Betty's just said the same. Thank you to. And can we just thank you all for coming? Because we're very strong believers in bringing the community in. Because I think everybody gets a different insight of what care homes should be. And it's nice for you to meet these and realise actually what you think a care home is not actually what happens. Thank you.
As we left Ivy Court, we all spoke about how much we enjoyed the fieldwork. We spoke about what the residents had discussed with us and hearing about the people they have loved and lost. It showed us that despite some of their challenges, the residents' enthusiasm for sharing their stories to make us laugh serve as a reminder that being human is making connections with others, and that sometimes you can find fun and laughter in the simplest things, no matter what stage of life we're in.
As we walked back to school through Bolby Cemetery, we stumbled upon a remembrance memorial that had the simple message, "Forever in our hearts," from Jean, Charlotte, Dan, Darcy, Emmy and Carl.
We saw the name Tom in the middle of a love heart. Who was Tom? How did he die? Were they the names of people in his family? The memorial made us think about how everyone has people they love and who love them. And even though we don't know who Tom was, he was obviously important to someone. It's like everyone has a story, and even when they're gone, their story leaves a mark on the people they knew.
At this stage in our documentary, we could summarise our answer to our guiding question, but we realised that it's simply not possible to represent everyone's view. Instead, it's now over to our students. It's now their turn to share their views on what it means to be human, as they'll now present their answer in the form of a speech in front of you, our wider audience.